Folks, there is something very seriously dangerous taking place in our public schools. In the second half of the show, we're going to talk about that and actually what you can specifically do to help protect your children enrolled in public education. But in the first half of the show, I want to interview Phil Ludwig here. Phil, you're with a ministry called Teen Rescue, and your ministry is under attack in a very serious way in the state of California. People throughout the country need to be aware of this because this can be happening at a state that they're in right now, perhaps using an education program that you're using. First, tell us about your ministry, and then we'll talk about what the state of California is doing to try to shut it down.
Sure. Well, Brad, I used to be a San Diego police officer, and when I retired, I saw a lot of need for kids that were falling through the cracks, and that they weren't really bad enough for the foster care system, but they were struggling and weren't successful in the public school arena. So we decided to create a school, and a Christian faith-based school that was dedicated towards mentoring these kids and redirecting them in a positive way through scripture, through positive reinforcement, through relationships, through restoring the relationship with their parents.
Okay, so this is a boarding school.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Christian boarding school. So you have, they spend the night there. They have food there. They have education.
No food. No, we don't get food. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, we give food.
Yeah, and spiritual encouragement,
Mm-hmm.
and it's helping kids who need help. They're going through some kind of issue, probably mental, emotional, spiritual, whatever. But this is a school that parents have decided they want for their child.
Correct.
And they've done due diligence. They've checked you guys out.
Right.
And they're watching and they're monitoring the progress of their children.
Or they're involved.
And they're involved.
Yeah.
And first off, what's the success rate of your school? Because I've heard of like foster care programs and all that have just been outrageous in their F, not a C or a D, but outright F rating. What about your school? How productive, how effective has it been?
Well, it's been really more productive than I ever could have imagined, which is really encouraging. We take on boys, girls, and we also help with a special population, girls that have been recruited into sex trafficking. And so these are separate programs, and they're handled separately. But we've had I would say, success can be measured kind of funky. I mean, you can manipulate the numbers any way you want.
Right.
But the way I say it is, if a child is leaving our program, our school, and they're doing well, and they keep moving forward, I see that as success. And about 7% of the kids that come into our program tank. They don't do well. And I would contribute a lot of that to the parent skills and the parent involvement. So the more the parents involved, the more success they'll reap. And so what happens is, generally speaking, another 7% completely knock it out of the park. I mean, unbelievable success. Most of the kids will leave, 80%, give or take, will leave and then have their ups and downs. But generally the second year they do a little bit better. And then the third year they tend to do really well. And so we haven't really figured out why the third year is the trick. But most of the kids do attest to the things that they learned in our school are life skills, not just the education part. But we go back to what a school used to look like a long time ago, where we teach them family values, budgeting, job interviews, practical things that kids need to survive out there in the world. So not just the math and the reading, which is important, but relationship training, life skills training.
Right. Excellent. So you have a successful program, unlike when you compare this with foster care.
Yeah, that's dismal.
Yeah, it's very dismal.
Yeah.
And the stats there are horrific. In fact, I understand one of the main problems with foster care is that a lot of these children are not being treated for being used as sex slaves, but actually they leave the program and become sex slaves or human trafficking.
They actually get recruited while they're in the system.
While they're in the system.
Yeah.
So we see what the state has to offer is a losing proposition.
Right.
Right now, Phil, your program, your educational program that you have at Teen Rescue is the only private program that's being offered in the state of California. Otherwise, it's the foster care system, right?
Yeah, as far as I know, there are no other programs that do what we do, especially for the CSEC, which is commercially sexually exploited children. That we're the only ones that do it, as far as minors. So there's some adult programs, there's some other programs that are kind of related, but not specifically. Like we'll keep a child as long as they need to. Like
right.
if they're just a child who's struggling at home, then we work with them for about 18 months. And then we get them equipped to go back home and succeed at home.
Right.
The CSEC kids we tend to keep longer because their trauma is so intense. And we partner with other NGOs to provide services that we legally can't provide.
So other nonprofit, non-government ministries and charities, right?
Right. Yeah, they're all faith-based. Obviously, we want to keep that faith-based. But we want to provide the child with all the necessary equipment to succeed. And as a school, we're limited on what we can provide. So we basically partner up with other people.
Right. Okay. So how are you under attack?
Okay. So we've been doing this for almost 30 years since I retired from San Diego PD. We've helped a lot of kids, and it's been an amazing blessing. So we've really enjoyed that. But through the years, community care licensing, which is a state operation, community care licensing is just that. They're licensing. They're not about child abuse. They're about licensing.
Licensing foster
yes,
kids. Okay.
Yeah. So they're exclusively for wards of the court. 300 kids, which is like abandoned kid, or 601s, which is delinquent kids.
Okay.
So that's what their focus is. Well, they have been after me forever because they want me to be a group home, and I'm
they want your ministry to become a group home, teen rescue.
Right.
Well, it is a boarding school, but it's not a group home. What's the difference?
Okay, the huge difference is that we're under the Department of Education, and we're not a clinical setting. Okay.
Okay.
So what they deal with is wards of the court. Okay, where the parent doesn't have custody of the child, and that there's usually clinical involved. Okay, most likely there's some sort of component there. So what they've said is, well, we want you to be a group home. We want to take you out of the Department of Education and we want to put you in the Department of Social Services. And I'm like, why would I want to do that? That's dysfunctional. I mean, I'm having success, and so now I'm going to quit and go do something that's stupid and doesn't work. So they came up. They just showed up at the campus and they said, we want to inspect you because we got a complaint that you were an unlicensed group home. I'm like, wait a minute. So there's no child abuse, complaint.
Right.
It's that I'm unlicensed. Who complains about that? And they said, well, it's anonymous. We can't tell you who did. I'm like, okay, that's ridiculous. I was in law enforcement. I know how this works.
Right. Okay.
So basically I said, look, you need to go away. We're not under your jurisdiction. You need to go away. So yeah, he came back about 3 weeks later with a warrant.
Okay.
And they went through all my files. They went through all interviewed the kids, the staff, and it was just and they were saying stuff like, don't take pictures of the library because it makes it look too much like a school. I'm like, really? You have an agenda here. This is obvious.
Really?
They said that. We heard them and we documented it. We wrote it down and we submitted it as a formal complaint.
Oh.
And so.
Well, so they interviewed all these people and everything. Mm-hmm. Anything turn up?
Yeah, we were exonerated, completely exonerated.
Okay, so then they've left you alone. They realized.
For about 2.5 to 3 years, and then they came back again.
Why? What's their latest?
Another anonymous complaint.
And they're trying once again to allege that you're
an unlicensed group home.
So you're not just a boarding school; you're an unlicensed group home.
Right. Okay.
And that's what they're alleging. Now, if kids need counseling, if they're dealing with issues and they need counseling,
right?
You don't provide them that kind of counseling, but there are other nonprofit organizations and ministries that can provide them counseling.
Yeah. So here's the funny part about that. Legally, I can provide that counseling. Since Columbine, all schools have school counselors.
Right.
But because licensing was threatening me, I basically said, okay, I'll compromise. I won't have any counseling. And it was funny because one of the social workers, she said, these kids get counseling. And I said, I'm not providing counseling. I'm not paying for it. I'm not providing it.
Who is?
And they said, well, you have somebody doing it for you. I said, no. If the parent makes an arrangement with a third party and we're not paying for it and we're not involved in hiring the counselor, then I'm not providing counseling.
Right.
And she goes, you're just trying to get around the law. And I said, exactly. I looked her right in the eye. I said, exactly. I'm trying to get around the law because the law is dumb.
Right.
And it's not even a law. It's just a policy
But you are going out of your way
right.
to make sure that that's not an issue because parents are the ones who make the arrangement with a ministry, a counseling entity, They make the arrangements. The counseling's provided from it. It's paid for by the parents.
Right.
You have nothing to do with it.
And to your point, what they did the second time they came up, because this is 4 times now, but the
Right.
second time they came up with 7 investigators, and they served a warrant, and they went through all my files again. And again, and the warrant was for, I think, 3 days. And so they went through all that for 3 days. Who gets a warrant for 3 days, right?
Right.
So they go through all the files, they interview everybody, and they basically say, okay, we're going to come back. And it was like the 5th day.
Okay.
And I said, they didn't know I was ex-law enforcement. So they're like, yeah, we're coming up. And I said, no, you're not. And they said, yeah, we are. And I said, no, your warrant's done. No judge is going to give you another warrant. If you didn't get what you needed in 3 days, you're done. And they're
They're just trying to pester you.
It's bullying.
Bullying.
It's
They're trying to bully you.
Absolutely abuse of power.
Okay, so then you contacted Pacific Justice Institute because they weren't going away.
They found us to be, again, exonerated. And then they showed up with 17 investigators, 17 police officers, 2 attack dogs, and they came after us again.
Okay, and then you contacted Pacific Justice Institute, and we have filed a lawsuit
Correct.
On your behalf to try to stop this bullying from taking place with a state agency that seems committed to shut you down. And the reason is because they want a monopoly on this kind of care for children. They want to take parents out of the equation. As you know, we're a big advocate for parental rights. If you are shut down, parents will not have an option
Right.
but to put their kids through the state, which is a failing system as we know it right now.
Absolutely.
On a massive scale. The casualties are tremendous in terms of spiritual, mental, and what happens statistically.
Right.
So I want to thank you for what you're doing. Now, you've set up a crowd fund to help us at Pacific Justice with this particular case. It's going to be very, very intensive. Give us information about that.
Okay, so they go to standingforfaith.org, standingforfaith.org, and there is a lot of details on the laws and all the things that they would want to research about what we're doing and where we came, how we got to this place. And then there's a GoFundMe account that will provide all the legal services and the operational service or operational cost during this process. So yeah, if they'd like to contribute, we'd love to have that support, and all the money will go to the program and to you guys at Pacific Justice to help with this lawsuit.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
And folks, if you'd like to support our work in this particular effort, please once again go to GoFundMe. Actually, go to your website,
Standingforfaith.org.
Standingforfaith.org, and there you can click GoFundMe, and we'd greatly appreciate that. Also, your prayers are very much appreciated, very much important. Your prayers are also very important as well, needless to say. This is a spiritual battle. And I want to thank you, Phil, for being on the show. Keep up your good work.
Thank you.
So on June 7th, I went to pick up my daughter from kindergarten, and she ran up to me and said that her friend was no longer a boy, he was now a girl, and that he had a new girl name. Went home, asked my daughter about it. I looked up the book on YouTube. My daughter told me the name of the book. It was I Am Jazz. So we watched the book being read, and we found out that she had been taught what transgenderism is. He had come to school dressed as a boy. The teacher had read the book, and afterwards he went into the bathroom, which was in the classroom. He went into the bathroom, changed into a dress, and came out. He was then announced as his new girl name, and the class was told that he was now a girl. For my daughter, having that book read and then seeing her little friend that she had known since preschool go into a bathroom, change clothes, and come out, in her 5-year-old brain, she thought, oh my goodness, all I have to do to change into a boy is to change my clothes. My daughter was taking a bath, and she got up out of the water, and her hair was slicked back, and she saw a reflection of herself. And she started crying and shaking, and she was like, Mommy, I turned into a boy. I don't want to be a boy. And she was scared. She was really concerned about what she was wearing or how she looked. There were other kids in the class that were afraid that their blood could turn into boy blood. Another little boy went home, and his mom had to have the entire sex talk with him about body parts. It was very confusing. And again, the parents had no idea what had been taught in class. So they were all exposed to this highly controversial sexual topic without having any, without even thinking about their own sexuality yet. There were members of the LGBT community that were actually transgender that came up to us and said, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that happened. And I stand with you, and I'm for parental rights. And that wasn't right what happened, and I'm so sorry that got taught to them." And that to me was just so amazing, because the point of it was I was protecting my daughter and the other kids in that class, because they all have the right to be protected, all of them. And so it was actually really beautiful. I loved working with the Pacific Justice Institute because I felt like they had my same heart. It wasn't about fear or judgment or anything. It was like, hey, let's support you and help you through this, and let's fight for the rights for everybody. It was never about hate or anything, which made it super easy. I would totally recommend Pacific Justice Institute if you have something that happened at your school, if you have legal questions. Don't be afraid to stand up for what's right and to protect your kids.
When we heard about this situation at Rockland Academy, we got involved right away. We gave counsel to the parents on what the law did or didn't say, and we drafted a model policy for the charter school to adopt. Now, unfortunately, the school refused to apologize to the parents for the lack of communication, and they also refused to give a strong assurance to the parents that they would receive prior notice or that they would have the opportunity to opt their children out of similar circumstances in the future. If you ever have trouble with your school teaching your child something that you feel is not appropriate for your child, don't hesitate to give us a call or go to our website, pji.org. We're here to help. And folks, if you'd like to support the Pacific Justice Institute on either a one-time or a monthly basis, we greatly appreciate that. Just go to our website, pji.org. P for Pacific, J for Justice, I for Institute.org. We have wonderful resources there, all free, available to you. So if you can go to that website, take advantage of those resources as well, we greatly appreciate it. We're also looking for volunteers, I might add. So if you'd like to possibly volunteer in one of our offices, either in office or maybe from where you're working, feel free to contact our office as well. We really appreciate it. Now we have with us here in the studio the head of our Southern California office, Attorney Michael Peffer. Michael, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Brad. Pleasure to be here.
Now, Michael, this California Healthy Youth Act, this is legislation in California. It is very powerful. It's very strong, and it's not for good. It's in a way that has many parents alarmed and upset. Tell us about this law, this legislation, and what parents can expect moving forward because of it.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. And it's a big deal. And it is a law in California, and I suspect many states this is going to follow. And what California has done is they have insisted that students of all ages receive proper information, I put that in quotes in my mind, about sexuality. And there's two parts of it. There's the sex ed part and there's the social sciences part. The sex ed part of it does allow parents to opt out, but that has to be done on a regular basis. And by the way, we have on our website, we have opt-out forms from all over the country. We also have a fact sheet on the California Healthy Youth Act that people can avail themselves to. But it has become far more attention getting at this point because in April is going to be one of the first times they roll this out in schools in California.
Wow.
So
Okay.
it will be done in either biology classes or it will be done in PE classes for some school districts. But our review of the information and curriculum shows that this stuff is not palatable for people who have traditional values.
Yeah. Yeah. So what we're seeing, the specifics coming out is very, very alarming. This is the framework.
That's right.
It's coming out. And I know one thing about the framework that I was very concerned about was spiritual abuse as one of the factors and criteria to be implemented. I mean, Michael, abuse has legal significance. That's grounds to remove a child from a family. What are they talking about when they say spiritual abuse? It's obviously targeting Christian families and maybe Orthodox Jewish families who really take their faith seriously. People who are of faith. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, what we're talking about is basically, and it doesn't even have to be a Christian thing, but what we're talking about is we're removing from the parents the right to tell their children, no, this is the way we live in this family. These are the values we support. And under the guise of abuse, quote unquote, spiritual abuse, what that really means is you can't tell your child that homosexuality is a sin. Again, that's not our issue here at this point. That's from another show, but it is removing it from the parents' responsibility to raise their children with the morals and the understanding that they have, and that is disastrous for families.
Yeah, I mean, you could have a young child, say, who's 13 years old, and that child wants to say, hey, I want to change my gender, or I want to engage in sexual relationships. This language could prevent parents from setting the boundaries against that, and that could be deemed as spiritual abuse. That, folks, I am so surprised in a way that we're that far down the river with regard to public education and the attack on parental rights, what they feel is best for their children. And yet this is how sick this framework is, and how dangerous it is for children.
Yes, and the bottom line is this is not theoretical anymore. This is happening right now.
Right.
So parents, in the next month, be aware of what's happening here. And if you haven't already done so, you can go down and opt out of all sex ed. Now, again, you can't opt out of the social science curriculum yet, but you can opt out of anything where sex acts are described and or mentioned, and that's the sex ed part of this. And so it's very important that we know this. PGI has received through folks that believe in what we're doing. We have received curriculum, and it's completely imbalanced. What it basically does, it gives a nod to the fact that, well, most people, when they look in the mirror, this is a for instance, when they look at the mirror, most people see what is corresponding with their biological gender. But then the entire curriculum deals with those who don't. That's what this curriculum is all about.
Yeah.
There's no discussion of that. There's no fleshing out that is how people are. And that's a problem.
Right.
It's again, even if one wants to think compassionately, which I do and I know you do, about people dealing with things like gender dysphoria, even if one wants to think compassionately about that,
right,
we must not look at this under a single view of how things originate, and that's where we're at right now. That's exactly where we're at. Is that the state's view of this has become paramount,
right?
And that's what's being taught,
right? Over parents, what parents believe is right for their children. You know, I think what's really valuable, which you mentioned earlier, is that opt-out form. This is applicable to all 50 states. So if you're in Maine, Florida, Texas, wherever, we made this. We crafted this, our attorneys, to protect parents out there. So I strongly encourage you, if you're a parent, a grandparent, you know someone, go to our website, pji.org. P for Pacific, J for Justice, I for Institute, Download that. Just go to the top of the screen where it says resources. Click down. You'll find it with, I think, parental rights, parental resources. Click that. Download that, print it out, and utilize that. And we will defend you without charge. If the school district says, oh, we're not going to respect this, contact us. We've got your back on this as parents and to defend parental rights. That's something I like about Pacific Justice. We don't just narrowly defend just religious freedom.
Right.
We go to bat for the rights of parents. We are the parents' rights advocate, I believe, in the United States on so many issues, including this.
Right.
So that is really important. Now, Michael, I know it's also important with regards to know what school districts you're in, what their policies are. So you have a school district. Let's say you have a school district that has sex education mixed in or along with other curriculum dealing with sexual orientation, gender identity. It's all one big conglomerate, sex education conglomerate kind of a curriculum.
Right.
Parents can opt their child out of the whole thing if it's a comprehensive sex education program, including all that other stuff. But if a school district has broken it up in California and they have sex education over here and separate from that, distinctly separate in a different program, is dealing with these other social issues of gender identities and sexual orientation, all that kind of stuff, then the law in California makes it very difficult for parents to opt their children out of the latter. They can do it to the former, sex ed, but they can't do it with regard to the LGBT kind of Q issues, correct?
Well, with specific regard to the social sciences aspect. So anything that's dealing with the history, and of course, the stated goal of California is that we don't want this to be seen as an illness or to be seen as something negative. This is according to the state, part and parcel of human development. And so the parts of the curriculum that have to do with that, with human development and social sciences and history, it's very difficult to opt your children out of that. In fact, our opt-out forms don't cover that because you can't. The law says you cannot opt your kid out of that. But we unfortunately we have to redouble our efforts on this, and parents have to be vigilant. So you fight what you can fight, and that is we provide these opt-out forms and go down there today if necessary. Get this form off of the website, sign it, make sure it's on record with the school itself, with the principal, and make sure that this is known and the parents' feelings are known about this.
Now, what about a school district? They go down to give the school district, they look at it and they say, oh, we can't accept this. We won't accept this. What I advise parents to do is say, send it certified mail.
Yeah.
You send it certified mail, keep a copy of it, then they have legally received it, and they're responsible for it. Is that what you'd recommend?
I think that's great advice. After you call Pacific Justice Institute, then send it by certified mail because that's illegal. Contact PJI. We'll get a letter out immediately saying that the school district must accept this. It's not a choice for them. The law allows parents to do this. So. But yes, I mean, I think that it would be definitely proper to send a certified mail, let them make them receive this.
Right.
But we will stand behind these opt-outs that they have to take that.
Right. In all 50 states, and that's important for people to understand that because California is not the only state that's going down this road. There's other states. Generally speaking, blue states are farther down the river on this. But even in red states, where you have cities, where you have school districts and controlled by the teachers' unions, they're pushing this agenda.
Right.
And so you say you're living. You say I'm living in a red state. But you're living in the city of Austin. You should be very concerned, or Houston, very concerned, and other cities across the country where. You may feel comfortable because the state you're in, but the city and school district you're in could have something very, very concerning, if not in some way dangerous to the development of your child, at least from a Christian or biblical worldview. So this is important. Folks, take this to heart. Now is not the time to put your head in the sand. Now is the time to get involved. Go to our website, pji.org. And if you have a school district that you're not sure, find out where that school district is with regards to whether they have a sex comprehensive sex education program or have they separated them. If they've separated them, say, hey, make it comprehensive. And then giving notice to parents, make sure they're giving clear notice to parents with a copy of an opt-out form to every parent in that school district. That is something you should be pushing your school district to do to help protect your rights and the rights of others. So folks, there you have it. It's our God-given freedoms we're talking about. Now, let's choose to keep them. I'm Brad Dacus of the Pacific Justice Institute. Have a good weekend.